What's up, Driven to Win Nation? Chaz Wolfe, serial entrepreneur. I'm your host. Today, I've got Jeff Goins on the stage, and he's a best-selling author and the founder of Fresh Complaint, which is a creative agency helping people master their message. And today, we go deep on how reading, writing, and clear thinking are guaranteed to get you all the power that you want in this life. So grab your pen. Let's dive in. Jeff, my brother. Recording's on. We're just gonna get
Oh,
rolling. I know you said
okay.
you would be good with keeping it casual and connecting. And dude, I have appreciated you from afar, and I just want to use this time to let the audience get to know you a little bit better. Of course, I want to get to know you better too, but you had a very interesting little piece in here. I was kind of going through the notes, and obviously you're an author, you're a best-selling author. You have a business around writing and creating ideas and fun stuff for other people, and we're going to get all to all of that. But I would love to start this thing off with asking you your favorite piece that you've ever either written or been a part of writing.
My favorite piece.
Yeah.
The favorite thing that I ever made was a private book of poems that I gave my wife for Christmas a couple of years ago, probably.
Why did that bubble up as your favorite out of all the pieces?
Because I think writing is a conversation, I like writing things for myself until a certain point, and then I want to see how they affect somebody else. It's the same reason that I like cooking. I love making things, but making something and then just kind of leaving it, to me, feels incomplete. I wanna make something and then see somebody react to it, hopefully, positively.
Right.
So my wife is my favorite reader. She's the only person in the world whose opinion I really care about these days, or certainly, the one that I care about the most.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was fun. I mean, I I've written books for lots of people before. I've never written a book just for one person, and so I've been writing poems to her for a long time. A couple of years ago for Christmas, I self-published a book that I wrote, laid out, edited, and designed myself, and that was fun. Like, I did every part of the project and gave it to her.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, first off, I love that answer for many reasons, and I'm sure we'll get into family stuff here in a bit. You know that I'm big on that, but for you to write for an audience of one, as you kind of said there, but specifically to watch her reaction. And I loved how you connected it to cooking. Julie, my wife, before having to cook for all of our children, really loved to cook. And but it was the same thing for her. It wasn't really about the cooking, actually, that she doesn't really care for that as much. It was, "Here, eat. I made this for you." And then, like, waiting, salivating on my reaction to the food, you know?
Sure.
What what do you think that is describing on the inner part of you, her, anyone else who has this desire? What is that reflecting?
I think it reflects ourselves. Human beings actually can't see themselves. I was reading a magazine before I came here. I was reading this in a copy of The Believer, which is a small literary magazine. And somebody was talking about this. Human beings actually, you never actually have seen yourself. You've seen at best a picture, a mirror image, but you've not actually seen yourself. And you have a pretty good idea of what you look like
Right.
and how you are. Except that you don't, except that all you're ever really seeing is people's reactions to you. And that forms who you are, or forms a lot of what you would think of as yourself. If you take away your parents, where you were born, who you lived with, who you grew up with, your teachers, your friends, relatives, loved ones, you take away everybody in your life, you don't have you anymore. You've got some sort of vague, abstract human being, but you don't have you. So we are, in many ways, what is reflected back to us by other people. So when we make something and it sort of bounces off of somebody, you sing a song, you say a thing, you write a poem, and you see how it affects somebody else. It's reflecting back to you something about yourself, I think. And I think that's why people, as soon as they want to, as soon as they create something, they want to share it. Yeah, it's common, speaking of family, people get married. Maybe it's less common now, but there is something biological and sort of human to, like, once you've got a good thing, you want more of it, and it's not necessarily always greedy. You get married, find somebody that you love, and a few years into that, you're like, let's have a kid. Like, love wants to kind of grow and expand and become more of itself. And creativity is that way too. You have a kid, you made a kid,
Yeah.
and you want people to look at it like, look at my cute baby. And so there is something about sort of the creative process, whether you're making human life or a souffle, that wants to be shared, that is kind of like incomplete until there's an echo, until something kind of bounces back
Yeah.
and confirms what you've done. And I think this is why a lot of artists are a little bit insecure. It's rare to meet a confident author, artist, thought leader. I mean,
Entrepreneur. If
yeah, they exist, but the truth is we don't know what a thing is until we see, especially a business. You don't really know what a thing is until you start to see its impact on other people. And then
Yeah.
you start to get some confidence. You go, "Oh, like this idea that I had, this thing that I thought might work
Yeah.
is working." And that's most fun when the work that you do has an impact on somebody else in ways that surprise you,
Yeah.
hopefully in a positive way. They don't devastate you, but, like, if people respond exactly the way that you want them to the thing that you've made, that's not quite as fun as, like, you did something and they got something in a way that wasn't exactly what you intended. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's fun about it, is it mimics life, that, like, life is a story that's continually unfolding and it's continually surprising us.
Yeah, I love all of that. It made me think of obviously Gathering the Kings as a community and being around people and having a chamber of people to bounce things off of. You got to experience. We were in Nashville. You're where you are, and we invited you to one of our dinners, and you got to just chat with some of our members, and we had just a cool conversation about one of your books, and that was just a really fun night. But from your experience using the kind of philosophy of you know this echo or this community need that we have, what's been your experience with maybe past your wife, past the family, in business, whether that's team members, maybe it's partners, maybe it's groups like GTK, but what's been your experience with what you just described as a need? How have you kind of itched that in your own life?
Well, I've been a part of masterminds before, a number of them. That's been really fun. The most interesting, fun way that I've seen resonance with creative work recently is when I read things and when I write something and then I read it in front of somebody else, like immediately
Yeah.
out loud. And so one of the projects that I'm working on right now as a ghostwriter is I am writing a children's story for my daughter's 3rd grade class. And so they have basically hired me as the ghostwriter to help them write a story. And so it's their story. I'm just kind of filling in the details, but they've given me all the plot points, all the characters and stuff.
Yeah.
So I wrote about half of it and it got long and I got super into it. I got like sucked into it. I like took some risks and stuff. This is a project that we're working on this winter that I hope comes out. I mean, where it's just a fun thing. My daughter's school has parents come in and share about their work. And so I've gone in and shared with them a little bit about what it's like to be a professional writer. First time I went in there, I shared all these books that I'd helped people write and books that I'd written myself. And this time I went in, I said, they wanted to learn about ghostwriting. I said, why don't we just do it? Why don't we just write a book together? So that's what we're doing. But I got really into it. And this is kind of I think a weird part about being a ghostwriter is you can't help but start to take the material personally. Like it
Yeah.
becomes something that you really care about. I've never worked on a book and not cared about it, which at times has probably been a detriment because I get too personally attached to it. It's not my book.
Yeah.
But I care about books. So I'm working on this book. And then my daughter was hanging out with us one night and she's 8. And I said, hey, can I read you what I have? She said, yeah. I said, like, I'm a little bit, sensitive about it. So be gentle. So I took her up to the playroom and I sat down and I read it to her. And because I'd taken their idea and I had really changed it into something that I thought was more interesting, which is
Sure.
always a risk with a client, especially a
Yeah.
group of, 30
10-year-olds.
kids. Yep. And I read it to her, and she was like, "I have 2 corrections," and she gave me these 2 corrections, and she said, "Other than that, I love it. I wanna hear more."
Yeah,
I
that's
really
good.
love that. I've done that with my wife. I was working on a book earlier this fall, and I would read a chapter to her at a time every night. I'd kind of write something, rewrite it. We'd go sit on the back porch for a little while, have a cocktail, and I'd read her, a new piece of writing. Now, I had heard years ago about a business author who did that, and I always thought that sounded cool. I was never brave enough to do it, and I like that. I think there's
Yeah.
something that I love about performance and live interaction with a piece of content. I'm I'm not like most writers I know, although like some, I guess, in that my first experience with creativity was performance, namely music, playing in bands in high school, and acting, on the stage. And so I got really used to performing material in front of people. And I think books can be that, before the invention of the printing press, the way that you would copy a manuscript is you would write something and you would read it. And that was the publication, was when you read it, it was making the work public. And then if somebody wanted a copy of that, if they liked it, you would hire a scribe and they
Mhm.
would copy it. Like think of like biblical times, like
Yeah.
first, second, third centuries AD. This is how we mass produce books is you would hire a scribe and they would like rewrite the thing that you had written. But publication was the process of actually performing your written piece of material. You read it aloud. And I think even to this day, no author should publish a book until they've read it aloud in front of somebody else.
Interesting. What do you use the word brave. You weren't brave enough to do that before. Now it sounds like it's a joy.
As a joy, yeah.
And so what was the switch for you from bravery to like, I don't know if she's gonna like it or someone else even, to now I find joy?
I don't know, getting over myself, probably wanting to be better than I necessarily knew that I could be. I don't know. I've been through a lot over the past several years, and at a certain point, hopefully you start to take yourself a little less seriously. And when you take yourself less seriously, there's less to lose. So when I write a book now, I'm less concerned about my reputation, and I'm more concerned about the quality of the book. Coming from the space that I come from, business leadership books, self-help, there's a lot of ego in that space. There's a lot of like you're writing a book so that you have a platform so that people treat you differently or buy things from you or do something for you. It's treated like a business asset.
Right.
I think about writing, I did that for a long time. I think about writing less that way. My books are not about me. I am about my books. I'm trying to create something meaningful.
Yeah. I remember when we first, met, Jake, and we sat down for coffee and you just kinda rattled off a few of the books that you've been a part of that everybody listening would know. I don't wanna say them unless you do, but I just it was just such a casual thing for you to be like, "Oh, yeah, I was part of that, this, that, and the other." And some of the books that I've really enjoyed. And so yeah, I appreciate you, but what I'm getting at underneath that is how how is it, or maybe you're still figuring this out, but how can you write such incredible material and then, like you're saying, disassociate it? Because it's not your book, it's not your story, but it's your writing. And so when you said X book, when we were sitting there at the coffee shop, I was like, "Wait a second, that's one of my favorite books
Hmm,
probably ever."
hmm.
So talk about that, because I think I probably the whole of what I'm getting to is this imposter syndrome and this ego connection that we have to whether it be our stuff or our business or, whatever. And you just displayed this like, "Yeah, it's no big deal. It was a great writing and I was a part of it, but, you know."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you're referring to, but there are A-list ghostwriters, and I am not one of them. I might be a B or C list, and I'm okay with that. Um, I think any honest writer, any honest creative writer would say at some point when you're working on something, something takes over that doesn't feel personal. Maybe it's that way in business. I'm not a very successful business person. I have owned businesses in the past. I understand the game of entrepreneurship enough to know, like, I'm not that great at it and don't want to be that great at it. Meaning, like, there are friends of mine who play game or play the game of business like they would play a game of chess. You know, they're moving all the pieces around on the board. They're seeing the whole game. I always like wanted to be a piece, you know, like I want to be doing a thing. I don't want to like run meetings all day long or look at spreadsheets. Like I want to like, I know that's not every business leader has kind of their
Yeah,
niche, but like some of like the fundamental aspects of running a business I felt really boring and like it was all like I just wanted to get back to doing the thing that I did, which was right.
for sure.
All that to say, it seems to me that in any sort of craft, there is a point at which you're not thinking about doing it anymore. You know, I imagine the best entrepreneurs that I know are playing the game of business like that. They're flowing. You know, even in athletics, uh, there is this way to master the game so much that the game is sort of being played through you versus you're doing a thing. Or if you're like, playing on a team, you can't necessarily take credit for the win. It's like, well, we were all kind of doing this thing together. I think a lot of the best stuff that I've ever written came from somewhere else. You know? Not that it's like some super mystical thing, it's just like ghostwriting is sort of like writing fiction, which I don't know that much about because most of what I write is nonfiction. But it's sort of like that in that the person who has hired you to write a book, and that can look a lot of different ways. You can be interviewing the person, maybe they're writing a first draft and you're editing it. It's a collaboration, so it looks different for everybody. My job is just to help a person finish their book and make it as best as it can possibly be and make them as proud of it as they can possibly be. And that's always kind of a wrestling match with the client and with the work itself because we're trying to figure out what this thing is and we all have different opinions about it. But like there is a point where you're just sort of like, where I've got dozens of interviews of a client and I've listened to those interviews and I've written down notes. And then I just sort of writing as if I'm that person. And it's not me, like, these are not my ideas. These are not even my thoughts, it's just what seems to be right now.
Yeah.
It's like the best way I can think of it musically is, like, you get a bunch of friends together and you're, like, jamming, and I play guitar, and it's like, like, you're just all, like, playing, and, like, somebody plays a little riff, and somebody's like, "What's that? Where did that come from?" It's like, "I don't know, it just felt like the right thing to do at this time, and if another time came along, there'd be another right thing to do."
Yeah.
It's kinda like that. It feels like flow. But, like, I'm not beyond ego. There are plenty of books that I've worked on that I don't remember writing. I don't know who wrote what. So, if you pulled a book off of a shelf and go, "Man, like, I love this line. You wrote that, right?" It's like, I don't know. Ghostwriting, at least the way that I do it, is collaborative. So if you were
Yeah.
to hire me as a ghostwriter, you might say, "Hey, like, here are these 12 rules for life that I want to include in my book," and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, rule number 1." And I would say and I would share it with you. Here's chapter 1. And you go, "No, no, not like that, like this, and I wanna say this." It's like hiring somebody to, like, build your house, you know? It's like you need an architect, you need a GC, you need a bunch of, contractors to do all the work. And then you're still kinda walking around going, "Let's tear this wall down." And then the GC's like, "If you that's a load-bearing wall. If you tear that down, the whole thing's gonna collapse." So there are projects that I've worked on where I go, "I don't know if I wrote that, if the client wrote that, if that was an idea from an editor." So a book really is this communal project. There's lots of people working on it, making sure that it becomes, what it is. And even an author should have a certain kind of humility towards their work and be like, I, I don't know. I don't know who wrote that. But the the fewer ideas you have, the more precious you are about them. The
Mhm.
more you work in the world of ideas, the more abundant you realize ideas are. Like, I don't feel precious about my ideas. I could I could write something. I could write my best line, my best thought and share it and maybe put it in a client's book. It's my idea. I've given it to them. My story, my concept, whatever. I've given it to them because it illustrates something that they're saying in their book. I've done that before many times. I used to be hesitant to do that. I don't
Mhm.
I don't feel so hesitant to do it anymore because as soon as I give away a good idea, another one comes and it's better. So I
Yeah.
just don't. When I hired a business coach years ago, and I was like coming up, in my own little space, and I had all these friends who wanted me to work with them, wanted to hire me as a consultant, advisor, bring me in as a business partner. And I was like, I've got a thing going on, but other people have other things going on. More is better. And I stepped away from what I thought was a multi-million-dollar idea because I just felt busy and overwhelmed, and it just didn't feel right. And I felt really sad about that. And I told my business coach about this, and he said, "Businesses are like trains, man. There's always another one coming." But if you're new to entrepreneurship, you're like, "No, this is it."
That's
Like
it.
I've seen Shark Tank or whatever. I've watched the movies,
Yeah.
and if I don't go all in on this one thing, it's never going to happen again. I've been in business for myself long enough and known enough entrepreneurs long enough to go, that's basically never true. Even if it is something huge, it's like something else will come.
Yeah.
And ideas are like that. They're like Bitcoin, just wait. It'll go down, it'll go back up. Like just wait.
Yeah. That patience at the beginning when you think this is the it, when this is the one, like I got to take advantage. I got to move now.
Right.
Obviously there's not as many probably, but many entrepreneurs overanalyze and miss the good opportunity and need to just be shoved into one probably. But
Right.
I think that you're probably right mostly with entrepreneurs, authors, whatever it is. It's like there's always going to be another idea, business opportunity, and it's tough in those moments to like watch it go away. Like I've
Oh,
heard
yeah.
even the Shark Tank guys, like I missed the opportunity to invest in Uber or whatever. I had this, in and I denied it and it'd be worth X amount now. And I remember playing that game a few years ago because currently right now, I just had a guy on the podcast probably 3 or 4 months ago, and he was screaming from the rooftops, buy Bitcoin because of
Right. Right.
these
Right.
cyclical 4-year natures. And I got in on one a handful of years ago and made a lot of money. But I turned into a very obsessive trader, and that's not my focus. That's not what I'm doing. And so even though I had this guy and he's like, dude, I'm telling you right now, like this is the time. And it has doubled since
Yeah.
having him on the show.
Yeah.
And I knew that it would. And I literally in that moment, I had even people on my own team ask me like, hey, so like, all right, what are you doing with this? I'm like, I personally am not doing anything because it's not the opportunity for me
Right.
because I know what it'll do to me. And I'm
I did
okay
the
with
same, yeah.
losing out.
Dude, I had a friend in 2013 in our mastermind group that we were part of, this business mastermind. He's like, "Dude, get Bitcoin. It's just gonna change everything." And he was like, "It's only $50 right now."
Right.
And he's like, "It was only $200." He just wouldn't shut up about it. We're like, "Fine, fine." I bought one whole Bitcoin for $400, and I was
Wow.
like, I had to like go to a CVS or something, and then it just didn't do anything for like 3 years. Like it
Yeah.
actually dropped down. It was like 200 bucks forever.
Yeah.
And then it started to hockey stick up, went to like 1,000. Then I got like really obsessed and started, checking it every day, every hour, every minute, buy, 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 buy,
Yeah.
buy, buy, buy. I just bought and held, then went up to 10,000, went up to 20,000, like, and then dropped down. I mean, and then I just held onto it for a very long time and then sold it. Like bought little bits and pieces of coins and stuff and got another crypto and
Yeah.
then needed to buy a house, and
Yep.
cashed out, and then bought a house in 2022 with terrible interest rates, but it was what we needed.
Yeah.
And and I got super obsessed in Bitcoin. I had a friend who had hundreds of Bitcoins,
Yeah.
hundreds of them that he had bought for hundreds of dollars. So
Yeah.
he'd like, I don't know. He lives in San Francisco, invests, he's an angel investor, been a bunch of a part of startups. He set aside 10 grand or whatever, threw it into something speculative and made a bunch of money off of that. I think made probably hundreds of thousands of dollars off of that, but didn't make hundreds of millions of dollars off of it or tens of millions. And I asked him, I said, like, do you regret that? He was like, no. Like, I've been in enough kind of high stakes games to know, like, you get in, you get out, like, you move
Move
on.
on. Yeah.
And I could always get back in or whatever. He said, but like, you can't play this game where it's like, well, coulda, woulda, shoulda, or what if
Exactly.
this or what if that.
Yep.
And I was the same way. I was super obsessed to the point that like like, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were talking about Bitcoin. I was like, "What is that even at these days? I have no
Yeah.
idea." And then they told me, I was like, "Oh, don't tell me." Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think ideas are like that. They are
Yeah.
actually abundant.
Yeah.
And, I was the kinda kid who would, like, make some money and just save it. You know, I had this sort of scarcity
Yeah.
mentality towards money. I still do to some degree, but I've learned a lot, since then, and I've learned that a at its essence, the point of money is to move. It's to
Yeah.
transact, it's to flow. This is why you call it currency. It has to keep moving. Money is just meant to provide for, it's meant to sort of be a, stand-in for trade, so it's a wonderfully efficient way of trading goods and services. And but the point of money is to use it for things, and so that's why I feel okay about buying a house with a Bitcoin.
I
It's like I
love
have
it.
a house, it's
Yeah.
like a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think ideas are that way too, like, ideas are functional, they have a function. They're meant to do something, not just, like, sit in a notebook somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Or
they're
just
cheap and priceless.
yeah. And to the reverse, it's like just one good idea isn't it's not the end. You're not gonna, your whole wealth is not gonna be out off of one idea. That can happen, but we're not missing something if it's like, oh no, but that's the one, and it's like floating away.
Yeah, any artist, any creative person that I know that's or, even an entrepreneur who's, like, holding on to their idea. You're holding on to a business idea or an invention or a poem or a song that you wrote or a novel or a book, and, like, you think this is it, like, it's so special that as soon as the world sees it, everybody's gonna love it.
Yeah.
You're deluded, That's not how things happen. It's not like Jeff Bezos is like, "I have this really great idea for Amazon, for an everything store, and
Yeah.
it's just
No.
gonna work." It's like everybody thought that was a terrible idea for, like, 20 years, and it wasn't the idea of Amazon or Apple or even Tesla that makes these companies extraordinary. It's the execution of the idea, and it's actually execution of idea after idea after idea after idea after idea, and it's execution of idea in front of other people. Like, the market is necessary. How people respond to your idea is what actually determines whether or not we think of it as a good or bad idea.
Yeah.
And it's not like there are actual good or bad ideas. They're just ideas that people like or don't like. We wouldn't be talking about Amazon today if people kept thinking it was a dumb idea. But
Yeah.
eventually everybody was like, like he got it.
You got me.
It's kind of undeniable, like it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Let's talk about the value of writing. I mean, you write, poems, you write books, maybe other things too, but for the listener right now who's probably an entrepreneur, who's probably busy, probably a lot like me before I had written, really much. Not that I've really written much still, but I find value in writing now. But talking to the person first who is like, writing, you have time for that? And why? What what value is in the listener just pausing for a minute and writing down their thoughts?
I mean, it's that you are capturing your thoughts. Writing and reading together help people think better and more clearly. So if I could tell everybody to do two things, I would say read more real books, physical books, not Kindle, not something on your laptop, not something on your phone screen, not an audiobook. Now, do whatever you want to do, but, like, if I could challenge everybody, it would be read real books because it does something to, first of all, ink on a paper is much easier on the eyes to read than any kind of screen. E-ink is better than a backlit blue light screen, but paper is still the easiest on your eyes. And it's just cooler. It's just cooler than a Kindle.
You can smell it.
You can smell it. Reading real books, especially this past year, has really, really slowed me down, and it's made me less anxious, less jittery, less distractible. As an author, sadly, for many, many years, I didn't read a lot of books. I would listen to a lot of books. I would consume a lot of content, but I wouldn't sit down and read a book. Very, very rare for me. Now it's pretty common. And I think reading real books is a really good discipline, even if it was just a few minutes a day, because it slows your mind down. And we live in this hyper productive, very busy world where more is being asked of you. So you're promising more, and then like you're having to deliver more, and it just kind of becomes this continual grind. Most people I know are very, very busy. They're not sleeping enough. They're not moving enough. They're not slowing down enough. They're not spending enough time disconnected from the world via social media, listening to a podcast, reading your email, like to just be quiet with your thoughts. That takes discipline and practice. Reading helps with that. The other thing reading does, the best thing reading does is it humbles you. You think you have some brilliant idea and you realize, oh, people are talking about this 500 years ago. Reading is necessary to make you a better writer. Why writing? Because writing allows you to capture what you're thinking or what you thought about in the moment. And if habit number one is to read real books, habit number two is to write something physical in a physical place, like an actual notebook. I hate my handwriting. It hurts my hands after a while. My wife and I went on a trip to wine country, California, a few months ago. I had a speaking gig at a conference, and she came along with me, and we went to like a friend's vineyard and drove around San Francisco. But I forgot my laptop. I actually left it in my backpack in the car that we parked at the airport. And I was like, my wife was like, you could run back and get it. I was like, one, I don't want to scramble. Two, I kind of like the adventure of going somewhere for like 4 or 5 days without a laptop. Now, I don't have a smartphone, so I just have this like little dinky dumb phone that really doesn't do anything. So
Except
I
for
was
call,
like, well,
just the thing that phone's supposed to do.
yeah, it just calls people. That's it.
Just calls people.
So I never use it. And it was super fun. But when we got to so we went through security, go to the airport, and I just bought a pencil and a notebook, and I wrote in that notebook all weekend, and I loved it. It reminded me of why I journaled for many years. It kind of like reminded me of why I stopped journaling, which is I just got too busy.
Yeah.
But I would wake up every day, every morning of that trip, I would wake up and I would write a little bit in that notebook. And the point of it was not to publish it, not because I thought this was some brilliant idea. The point of it was just to write. Julia Cameron calls this morning pages. You write 3 pages every morning, just kind of download stream of consciousness. And she says, you do it to get the cobwebs out. And it does feel that way. If you've ever sat down for like 30 minutes, you just written 3 pages and then like kind of like put those somewhere else, turn the page, delete it, whatever, and then start writing, you're clearer, you're more focused. So I think the number one reason to write and read more is because it will make you a better thinker. And being a better thinker will make you a better writer. And then writing more will make it'll just kind of keep bouncing back and forth. You will become more eloquent. You will become a better communicator. And because of these things, people will listen to you and want to believe you and follow you and pay attention to you. And that's tremendous power, like that you shouldn't have as a human, but you will have it. But it's a good skill. My first job out of college was as a writer. Somebody hired me to help them write ads as a copywriter. And then we worked together on an online magazine that we launched. And he said to me, this is my first boss. He's still a friend of mine. It's 20 plus years ago. He said, I see you're a writer. He says, if you can write well, you should never be without a job. And I was like, well, sir, I beg to differ because I don't have a job, and he hired me. But he was right in the sense that if you can become proficient at writing, not even like the world's best writer, but you can like learn how to spell and have decent grammar, and be able to think well on paper,
Yeah.
that's a tremendously valuable skill, you
Yeah.
know? Somebody's gotta write a business plan, somebody's gotta send the email, and importantly, somebody at some point has to stand up in front of a group of people and capture attention, capture belief, persuade people. And I'm grateful for those skills because whatever pickle I get myself into in life, I can usually talk or write my way out. I'm usually better at writing it than talking my way out.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, it's a great skill for that many other reasons.
Yeah, I appreciate your going deep on that. I think that I find myself personally, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but when I write, it is either what I want to do is write in bullet points. One, because I'm moving fast and I want to hurry up quick and capture it all before it leaves my brain. I want to capture what's in there, and there's just so much in there, probably because I don't write enough. And then there's the other element where, my mom growing up, when you say eloquent and being able to speak, she was huge on language and being able to be precise in the way that we wrote and the way that we spoke. And so I find myself, what, like I don't know who I'm writing for, but it's like no one's gonna read this, but I feel like it has to be perfect. And so I'm like, it takes so long. I don't, nah, I won't do it. And so how does someone like me get to a place where I can just wake up, journal, and then throw it away, or turn the page, as you say, where it just doesn't matter as much?
Where what doesn't matter as much.
The result of what I'm writing. Like when I'm writing it, it's like I'm moving slow because I want it to be perfect. I want it to be written right with the right, language.
Yeah,
The
I mean, I think that's okay. I think it's good to be, exacting or to want to try to do it well. You know, the idea of the end justifying the means is a uniquely American idea or a Western idea, which is like there's a goal, there's an object, whatever I gotta do to get there, is good. You translate that to a culture like Japan, where everything can be a sort of ritual and you want to be careful, you want to be precise, you want to do it well because this is what is required of this thing. I mean uh, I think of cooking, I recently got a wok and we've been cooking everything in the wok lately. And initially, I was just like, turn it up hot and throw some oil in there and throw things in there. But I realized with Asian cooking, there's a lot of precision involved, depending on the cuisine. Certainly with Japanese cooking, I would say with Korean cooking, a little bit of Chinese cooking. And I cooked this dish one day and it was just like noodles and some sauce. And I was like, that's it? Like, I wanted like 100 things in it. Like, I like complicated things. And then I, like, watched this video and I reread the recipe, and then I just took my time with it. And 2 things happened. 1, I really enjoyed the experience more. Even though it was, like, 3 ingredients, I was really kind of intentional with the timing of every step, and I took my time. It wasn't a means to an end, it was the end,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it. It was just fun to do. And then 2, it tasted better. Like, the result was better. How that's analogous to writing is when you are the quality of your life and what you're able to produce as a creative individual is directly related to how good and clear of a thinker you are. If you're a clear thinker, you're going to be an effective communicator. If you're an effective communicator, you're going to be able to lead and motivate and persuade people to do things that they might not otherwise be able to or want to do. If you can do that, you have power in the world. What you do with that is up to you. You will be able to make money. You could get elected for something. Like you can do things. If you can gain attention and do something with it, you are now an influential person. And most people do not know how to do that at scale.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool to have. It's why almost every famous or powerful person throughout history at some point said, I need to write something down. I have to record my life, my thoughts, my ideas. I'm going to hire a scribe to do it, or I'm going to do it myself, or I'm going to do, or something like that. But that's very, very important. So people understand that there's a direct correlation between power and influence and the written word, the ability to write well and to communicate well. So my point is this: Every morning that you do that, you are practicing that skill that will come out throughout the day.
Yeah.
If you do it well and you do it with awareness and as much skill as you possibly can, the process of it becomes enjoyable, not because you love doing this, but because you're a human and you don't actually know what you like and don't like for the most part. And there are so many things that you could like if you cared about doing them while you were doing it. That's my feeling. I do not like mowing the grass. And for years, I had somebody mow the grass for me. But then when we bought this house, I thought, I'm just gonna do it. Small yard, whatever. And I don't love it every time. But when I take my time, when I give myself 2 hours, not 45 minutes before dinner, and I don't rush through it, but I use it as an opportunity to get outside, do some thinking, smell the grass, just be present. Don't listen to anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
I love mowing the grass. And so the enjoyment doesn't come from the activity. It comes from how aware I am willing to be in that moment. And I think most things are that way. Not maybe all things, you can have your preferences, but most things are that way. And so this is a discipline in learning how to slow down so that you can pay more attention, so that you can think more clearly, and then you can communicate more clearly. And the next time somebody asks you your thought, your opinion, your idea, you're going to be sharper. You're going to be better. It's a workout.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. Thank you for giving us that. As you were saying that, it kind of made me think of I miss mowing. We moved to some acreage. It takes hours and
Yeah.
hours and
Yeah.
hours. And I used to do it because of that. It was like
Yes.
I could get away for like 4
Yeah.
hours
That's
and
good.
and just lose myself. I just put the headphones on. I wouldn't listen to anything. Sometimes I'd listen to a book or something, but every now and then just think and for hours on end. And of course the lines, man. Create the lines
Yeah.
like you're talking about.
Yeah. 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 You're one of
Ooh,
those crazy guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the other analogy I would give is like you don't just go to a gym to get swole. Like there's two ways to work out. One is I hate this, this sucks, whatever. By that, like all of the gym rats at my gym kind of love being there. Like they like the vibe, they like the scene. Yes, they're there to get gains and to get results, but they love being there. They like doing it.
yeah.
And they're doing things for the most part that they like, except for maybe leg day or whatever. But I would say that, like, say writing a little bit every morning and then turning the page is like working on your technique. And any person who's serious about lifting or any kind of skill, but in terms of working out, your technique is everything, and everybody know it's like golfing. Here's just a
Yeah.
million analogies, but it's like these little tweaks really, really matter. And obviously when you're dealing with like, I don't know, bench press or squat or something, there's like the vanity metrics, which is like, if I don't totally do it just right, I might be able to get more, but I could also hurt myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think writing is that way. You could hurt people if you aren't
That's true.
precise in your language, if you don't know what words mean. You will, if you're better than average at this skill, if you learn how to write relatively well, you will have power over people in some way. And if you don't know what to do with that, or you aren't careful and precise and aware with this tool, you can cause damage. It's like an old entrepreneur friend of mine said, the most dangerous thing for a man to have is too much money too soon and too much time on his hands. It's like you haven't learned how to use these resources.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us haven't actually learned how to use our brains. And writing is a really, really powerful tool to keep writing and reading together to sharpen that tool over and over and over again.
Yeah, I appreciate you kind of putting those two things together. The reading the physical book, writing daily, I think is incredible. What about for the listener as we kind of wrap up here? I want the listener to know what is a good. I mean, I think you've described what a ghostwriter does, but how can a ghostwriter help them? Maybe they're in an industry where they've never thought about writing a book. Maybe they have thought about writing a book. How does partnering with someone like you, Jeff, help them not only just execute the book, but go to that next place that you help your authors go to? What does that look like for them?
Sure. Most people would say, you should write a book. You should write any old book because it's going to put you on a platform and establish you as an authority amongst your peers and blah, 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 blah. The problem is that's what most people are saying. That's what many people are doing, and it's getting really, really crowded and really, really cluttered, and there's a lot of bad books out there now as a result of just put any old piece of junk out there.
Yeah.
I don't think that's why anybody should write a book, because you're like everybody else, which is never fun, and it doesn't do that. It doesn't actually do that for most people. I think people should write a book because they wanna go on a journey of discovery, both discovery of maybe themselves, but certainly of a message or an idea that they wanna share with the world. I think you hire a ghostwriter or a collaborator, and these are all semantics,
Yeah.
means different things to different people. Some of what I do, you could call editing. Some of what I do, you could call, ghostwriting or collaborating or whatever. And so my job is really to help somebody figure out what they have to say, figure out how they're going to say it, and then come alongside them to help them say it.
Yeah.
And I think somebody should hire a collaborator like myself to help them with that process if they're willing to go on a journey that will humble them and will change them in some way. And out on the other side of it, because you've really wrestled with this idea, in some ways you become an expert, at least at your own book. So when I write a book, I never really know what it's about. I don't really know what I want to say. I have an idea. I have a little bit of an itch that I want to scratch. But the reason I start writing a book is because I want to learn. I want to go deep in a subject.
Yeah.
When I wrote the book Real Artists Don't Starve, I read 100 books about creative professionals who were successful because I wanted to understand if my hypothesis, which was that you don't have to starve to be a creative professional, like I wanted to know if it was true, And when I wrote The Art of Work, which is the book that came before that, a book about vocation, that was, again, it was like, how do you find a calling? How do you find work that is meaningful? And I interviewed 400 people as part of writing that book. And so by the end of that journey, I didn't just have an idea or a story or a 5-part, formula to share. I had really kind of wrestled with this, and there was a certain authority to my message and how I communicated it that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And when you hire, say, a ghostwriter, you are if it's a good partner, basically hiring a collaborator, a coach, somebody who's done this professionally numerous times before and can help you not just take all of your random ideas and put them on 200 pages and call it a book, but actually help you think through this in a way that it actually makes sense. Because the reality is most people think they want to write a book. They think they have an idea for a book and they don't. They have like an idea for a chapter or an article. There's a common saying in publishing, which is this could have been an article. Like is it a book or is it an article? You don't want to be somebody who writes a book that should have been an article. And you don't want to be somebody who is holding on to some idea that should be a book and you just don't know how to get it out into the world. Hiring a collaborator, a ghostwriter, somebody who can help you in the writing process will ensure that you actually say something that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah, something meanwhile worth the value of the purchase. It's funny.
Yeah.
I was reading a book that kind of was along these lines. There was a section where he was talking about the value of reading a book versus of an article or a podcast, and the time of preparation and actual information that goes into the podcast versus the article versus a chapter versus a book. And I think it was something like 15 years of experience goes into each book on average, as opposed to listening to a podcast, which is, like we've got experience, but you can only talk in such depth. I mean, you took us pretty deep here, but like a conversation can only be what it is in 45 minutes, as opposed to, just like this stacked full of research and value inside of a book, which is in essence what you're saying, that as the writer, that I'm gonna have to go on that journey of either stacking all that value together, or I'm gonna have something that's not very meaningful to read.
Yeah, books are not reactive. They can't be. They're necessarily slow. Like the fastest I'll write a book is in like 3 months, And that's pretty fast, It usually takes 6 months, if not longer. But that's just the writing. There are usually years and years of thinking that go into the process of even starting to write the book. Once you start writing the book, you're basically saying, here's everything that I know about this thing. And so taking your time and thinking about a thing so that eventually you can think clearly about it, and then writing so you can see how clear your thoughts actually are. Because if you think you have a great idea and you can't like write it down clear, you don't have an idea. Like
Right.
it's just some crazy idea in your head. And so I think just the discipline of writing, and certainly writing a book, forces you to slow down, forces you to get clear, and kind of forces all the bad ideas out. Because you write down, oh, that's not stupid. That's not good. And yeah, I think it's the best way to call your own bluff and see how good your ideas actually are.
I
Try to
love that.
You think you have a great idea? Write a book. I dare you.
Yeah, and then if you need some help, Jeff and his team can help you. But in all seriousness, Jeff, you are incredible. You've got an incredible mind. I appreciate you slowing down the conversation here today so that we could just hear some of the value that you've stacked away over these years of experiences and books that you've written and people that you've worked with. How can the listener connect with you? How can they find you? How can they hire you if they want to write a book?
Oh. So I run a small writing and editing agency with my wife, and the best way to contact me is to just shoot me an email, jeff@goinswriter.com. And you can check out our work if you're interested in being a client. We just fill out a little intake form and we talk through it. We're a boutique agency, and so we work with just a handful of folks every year. If we're not right for you, we'll refer you to somebody that is. And you can find more about the work that we do at Bestow, Bestow, lit.com. That's bestowlit.com.
Perfect. We'll have all that in the show notes. And as we've told you in the past, I'm excited that I know you. I'm excited that I get to agitate the way I think by having conversations like this with you. And I look forward to writing our book with you soon. It'll be fun.
Sounds good.
We've been working on that message that you've been talking about. So we'll be excited to do it. Jeff, thanks for being here, brother. Blessings to you, your family. Thanks for the time. Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.